Okay, students, we're going to learn the Carlsen method of factoring, which is the fastest and the least amount of work compared to the AC method and box method, and should be least chance for error as well, and for you to truly understand and be able to quickly check your answer as well. Okay, so first thing you need to know is the standard form of a quadratic. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now, if there's no equation like there isn't in this first example, you're not going to set equal to 0. But if there was, you'd set the equation equal to 0 first. Remember, this ax squared is the shape of the graph. If we're talking about the graph, it's also called the quadratic term because it's degree 2. The middle one is called the linear term because it's degree 1. Degree 1s are lines. And the c is called the constant term, number by itself. Okay, so you need to know those because it may ask you on DCAS, what's the coefficient of the linear term? What's the coefficient of the quadratic term? What is the constant term? You have to know your terms. Okay, we've talked about this already. Okay, so I have off to the side here written the steps of solving all quadratics. Okay, now when I say solve, that means there'd be an equal sign in it. If there's no equal sign in it, you would skip the steps that deal with the equal sign. So step 1 you would not do because it said equal to 0 because there's no equal sign. So you go right to step 2, which is factor out the GCF if possible. There's not always a GCF to factor out. Step 3 will be factor what's left inside the parentheses. That's if you factor out a GCF. If there was no GCF to take out, you wouldn't have parentheses. It would just be the whole equation again, the whole polynomial expression, quadratic expression. And you'd factor that if possible. Okay. Step 4, if it's an equation, so then you have it set equal to 0 to begin with, then you set each factor after you factor that equal to 0 and solve. The answers that you get are called roots, zeros, x-intercepts, or solutions. You need to know all 4 terms. They could ask any of those in the directions, and you have to know what it means. Okay? All right, so no matter what method you use, mine, box method, or AC method, you have to do these first steps right here. Now, for those who want to cheat and try using the programs online to get your answers, they thankfully skip this step. So they don't show you this. And they just jump right to one step. And I ask students how do they get it, and they can't explain it. So this is how we know you're cheating if you don't have this down and they come up with the 2 factors correctly. That means the rest of what you did, you got off the internet. Very easy for us to tell, all teachers. Okay, so first thing I'm gonna do is factor out the GCF. There's no setting equal to 0 because it's not an equation. I see here the GCF is 3. I take it out, I'm left with 3x squared minus 5x plus 2. Notice step 2, or that was step 2. Step 3 says factor what's left inside the parentheses. So that's this right here, if possible. So now I have to come up with the 2 factors that are going to help create that. So they need to multiply to AC. Notice A is the coefficient of the quadratic term. B is the coefficient of the linear term. And C is the constant. Okay, you need to know those vocabulary words: coefficient, quadratic term, linear term, constant term, because you could be asked what's the coefficient of one of those terms or the constant term itself. Okay, quadratic, you automatically think degree 2, linear degree 1, constant degree 0, because I can always write this as x to 0, which equals 1, so it just gives you the number itself. Okay. All right, so what does AC multiply to? Notice it's AC and be all 3 letter numbers in our quadratic expression here are going to be used. It multiplies to the 2 outside numbers. That's A times C, 6. It must add to the middle number, -5. You cannot forget that sign, the -5. If you miss either of the signs, whatever AC multiplies to or B, it's going to blow your whole answer on any of these ways. All right, unless you cheated and used photo math, for example. And then it's not going to show you this. All right, so I need to come up with the 2 numbers that multiply to 6 and add to -5. Well, that's going to be -2 and -3. Nice and easy, small numbers. Multiplies to +6, adds -5. All right, so with the Carlsen method, okay, I know when I multiply 2 binomials together, that the first two terms, the first term of each, has to multiply to this first term right here. The only thing that multiplies to 3x squared is 3x and 1x. That is it. So there's no thinking involved. Then I'm going to draw two smiley faces right here. These have to multiply to these two numbers right here. So notice I have 3 times what gives me the negative 3. I always start with the biggest number. So 3 and 1. I'm going to start with 3. 3 times what gives me one of these two. 3 times nothing gives me negative 2. They got to be integers. 3 times what gives me negative 3? Negative 1. So that one's taken care of. I just did that one. So that means 1 times what gives me negative 2? Negative 2. Now I've taken care of that one. If you need to put an X underneath each one after you've taken care of it, go ahead and do it, whatever it takes. Okay, this is your answer right there. You can't get any quicker than that right there. Now I can check it real quick. I know 3x times x is 3x squared. I multiply my outside together, that's minus 3x. I multiply my inside together, minus 2x. And those are like terms, so I combine those and I get the minus 5x right there. And then lastly, I have negative 2 times negative 1 is my positive 2. So I just quickly checked it right there to see that it works, because when I multiply my two binomials back together, they must give me what I started with right here. Okay, and that is the Carlsen method. All right, let's try it on a couple more problems. Now, remember, in step 1 would be factorize GCF. There is no GCF because 13 is prime and 6 doesn't go into 13. So I know then I have to write down multiplies to AC, and A times C is 36, and it has to add to B, which is negative 13. And this is where knowing your integers comes into play real quick. You have negative 9 and negative 4. Okay, multiplies to 36 and adds negative 13. Now, here's where you got to do a little thinking, because remember, I know these first two terms have to multiply to 6x squared, where there's two possibilities. It could be 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. So I need to see that work on my method, that you write it down right there, so you're showing me that you know that there has two possibilities. I can go in here. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to always start with the highest number, 6. Does 6 multiplied by an integer to give me negative 9 or negative 4? No, it does not. So 6 and 1 are out. So if it's going to factor at all, it has to be 2x and 3x. It doesn't matter which one I put where, because the key is you're going to connect with your two smiley faces, the outsides and the insides. And they have to multiply to these two numbers right here. So I'm going to start the largest one, 3. 3 times what? Nothing gives me negative 4. 3 times negative 3 gives me the negative 9. So that one's taken care of. So now I have 2 times what gives me negative 4? Negative 2. Now that one's taken care of. And there's my answer. Now I can go ahead and check and verify it. I got 2x times 3x is my 6x squared. I have the 2x times negative 2 is negative 4x. The 3x times negative 3 is negative 9x. I add those together and I get negative 13x right there. And then last I have negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6 right there. So I just quickly checked in my head that I guarantee have the right answer. Okay, quickest, fastest way to get factoring done. All right, last one. We have an equation this time, so we're going to solve it this time. Okay, remember the first thing we do is set our quadratic equal to 0. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. I always want a to be positive, a greater than 0. Since a is negative right there, remember it's the coefficient of the quadratic term, practice your vocabulary, I'm going to go ahead and move it to the other side. The coefficient of the linear term is negative 2, and the constant term is negative 12. So I move it across. I have 4x squared minus 2x minus 12 equals 0. Now, when you're solving a quadratic, just so you know, as opposed to just factoring, if I'm solving it, instead of having to factor out the GCF, I can just divide by the GCF on each term. So that's 2 is the GCF. And I'm down to 2x squared minus 1x minus 6 equals 0. And now I'm going to factor that. So I know, again, it has to multiply to AC, the outsides. 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. Don't forget your signs or you're going to blow it. Adds to B, a linear term, -1. Linear coefficient, I meant. Okay, what multiplies -12 adds -1, -4, and +3. Remember, it's going to multiply to -12. One's negative, one's positive. And so you have to know your multiplication integers quickly and adding integers quickly. Now, nice and easy here. Why? Because there's only one thing that multiplies to 2x squared. That's 2x and x. So I don't even have to come up with any other possibilities. Nice and easy. Draw my two smiley faces. 2 is the larger number, so I'm going to start with that. 2 times what gives me the -4? -2 does. So then that's taken care of. What gives me the 3? 1 times +3 gives me the 3. Now that's taken care of. Okay, if you need to put x's like that to show you've taken care of it, and here you have it. I can guarantee I'm right because I have -4x there. I have +3x there that adds to the -1x. And 3 times -2 is your -6 right there. 2x times x is 2x squared. Now, being that this is a quadratic that we're solving, because it's got an equal sign, I now do that step 4, which is set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So I have 2x plus 3 equals 0, or x minus 2 equals 0. I want to see work on this left one because it takes 2 steps. People who try to do it in their head, they want to put -3 as the answer, and that's wrong. Okay, I get that, and then I have to divide by 2, and the answer is -3/2. This one you can do in your head. You're just adding the 2 across. X equals 2. That's only one step. Okay, so show me the work. When it takes 2 steps, you don't have to show me the work when it takes 1 step. You can do that in your head. What this is, remember, these are called roots, zeros, x-intercepts, or solutions, these two numbers. What that means is this quadratic goes ahead and crosses the x-axis at those 2 points. There's 1, there's 2, so it crosses there, and it crosses at -1.5. Since it was a positive 4x squared there, okay, it's going to be opening up. We're not going to go ahead. I'm not going to go ahead. That's not the point of this, is to get accurate points besides these other points. Okay, you've done that in the quadratic chapter. Okay, and graphing it. But we know it opens up going through those two x-intercept solutions, roots, or zeros. Okay, that right there is the Carlsen method, the quickest and fastest way to factor. But you need to show the work. You cannot skip, like I see people who cheat trying to use photo math. They want to cheat on this and not come up with this at all. No matter what method you use, you have to have that down. If you don't know that and come up with those two factors, you cannot factor in your head. That means you are cheating with your graphing calculator, or you're using photo math or another math resource online. Every teacher knows it.